Are you looking to expand your aesthetic practice and attract high-quality new patients? Discover the power of digital marketing in growing your practice with a personalized strategy session. Join Ryan Davies, Equa's marketing director, for an exclusive 90-minute meeting. Ryan and his team will invest hours prior to your session, crafting a customized marketing plan tailored specifically for your practice. This invaluable opportunity comes at no cost to you, with no commitments attached. Schedule your meeting with Ryan today by visiting www.businessofesthetics.org/MSM and take the first step towards transforming your practice with the potential of digital marketing.
You're invited to join our exclusive monthly webinar brought to you by the Business of Aesthetics community. Don't let this chance slip through your fingers. Secure your spot now for a game-changing experience. Register for free on our homepage at www.businessofesthetics.org and get set to transform your strategies.
You are listening to another episode of the Business of Aesthetic podcast series, brought to you by our gold sponsors, Equa Marketing. If you would like to network and share your experience with our podcast guests and other aesthetic industry professionals, join our Facebook or LinkedIn communities by searching for Business of Aesthetics. Prepare to be inspired as we introduce an esteemed professional in the field of plastic surgery. Meet Dr. Lauren Umstadt, a board-certified plastic surgeon of exceptional repute, practicing in the vibrant locale of Leawood, Kansas. Her expertise and dedication have earned her high acclaim in the industry, and today, we have the privilege of delving into her insights and experiences right here on the podcast. Without further ado, let's dive in.
Today we have Dr. Abby Culver on the Business of Aesthetics podcast. I am so excited to catch up with you. We share a background of both being tigers at Mizzou. Abby and I know each other, well, we actually went to undergrad together. We didn't know each other very well then, but we were in the same med school class. Dr. Abby Culver is a mom of two. She is a plastic surgeon in the great state of Texas. Abby, go ahead and tell everybody who's listening kind of who you are, where you're at in your career, and go granular for us and tell us after your residency and your training, kind of how have things progressed?
Hey, well, I am so excited to be here and excited to catch up. And thank you so much for hosting me today. It's an honor. So went to Mizzou, as you already recapped, for undergrad and medical school, and then came down to Dallas for my plastic surgery residency. So did an integrated 6-year residency at UT Southwestern. And near the end, about my 5th year of training, started looking into what I wanted to do. And I knew I wanted to do aesthetic surgery, but wasn't sure exactly where or what the plan was going to be. And ended up talking with my chairman and got an offer to stay on at UT Southwestern as faculty and plan to do aesthetic surgery there, focusing a lot on breast and body. So that is what I did. I took about a little over a month off after training. I was also pregnant with our daughter at that time, and then jumped right in and joined the faculty there. And had a great experience and learned a lot and got to work with a lot of amazing colleagues and residents and staff in the operating room and clinic. So I had a phenomenal experience. Ended up having my second child shortly after. They're about 14 months apart, and continued practicing there. And then a little after, I was there a little over 2 years and kind of decided that I needed more flexibility and a little more control over my time and home life. And for kind of those reasons, among others, decided to shift my career into the private practice route. So I left there. I'm still involved with the residents, still involved with some of the lecturing and conferences and that sort of thing, but did leave to go into private practice. From there, I went and I was kind of doing contracting out of an office a little bit north of Dallas in Plano. And I did that for several months until I opened up my complete own freestanding, or not freestanding, we're in a building, but own clinic back down in Dallas. And that's kind of the overview.
That's a big process, a lot to dive into there. But give us a sense of how hard is it, or how hard was it? Because you've been open for a few months now, right?
Yeah, just over 2 months really in this office. So it's very recent. So yeah, I have a lot of the information right at the top of my head.
How are you bringing patients to you now? As an academic center, a lot of times there's this huge funnel. And so the patients just come to you without any real intent with marketing and that type of thing. How are you being intentional about, attracting new patients to your practice now that you're totally on your own and responsible for,
For
for
sure.
everything?
So yeah, a lot of different ways. Social media, you have to love it. So I've been on Instagram for a while and had a profile, and that would bring me some patients. But I actually was mentoring this student. I met her through her dad was actually he's an oculoplastic surgeon who I worked with during training. And I started mentoring her when she was a senior in high school. She's now about to start PA school. So through her entire undergrad time. And she was spending a month with me and basically told me that I needed to get with the times and get on TikTok, and started getting some content and posting it. And she kind of opened that whole world. So basically, between Instagram and TikTok, that's a lot of my patients. And then I would say the other half is about pretty much word of mouth, referrals from happy patients, which is one of the best ways to get patients, referrals from people I work with, nurses, people in the operating room. That's always an awesome way to get patients as well, and such an honor when they refer people to me. And then I do also, this is a big part of it, but as of just like 2 months ago, I have a company that I pay who does my SEO, which I did not even really know was a thing until within the last year, but they do the search engine optimization so that we show up on Google, and they kind of do all of that. They also made my website, and they do the blogs online and kind of help with that method of advertising and getting people to know that we're here and to come in the door.
Yeah, there's lots of marketing, and I feel like it constantly changes, which is good and presents a challenge to some degree.
Yes. And yeah, things like on TikTok, there's stories now, which I think I've maybe posted like one. You're much more savvy than I am. You're like my TikTok idol, you and a couple others. So I'm trying. I also didn't know how to like splice videos. So I'd have to get it like all in one. Like I can't mess up talking about whatever procedure or whatnot. So I'm learning those things. And then we have English in our office who is kind of like coordinates all of our marketing and kind of oversees all of this. And she was like an actual digital marketing major, not in healthcare, which is a huge asset because she, first of all, just makes me get on and do videos and be involved in the posts and kind of reminds me that it's an important part of the day. And then also helps with making sure they're getting posted correctly. And I say edited, I guess spliced is more the word. But kind of she helps with all of those things. And she's brought a lot of creative energy and creative ideas to the practice. Also created like a practice Instagram instead of just my own personal one, and done a lot of things there. So I just kind of let her lead me in what her ideas are. And that's been really, really helpful and fun for me.
Yeah, inspire you, guide you. So let's shift to your practice today. Give us a sense of, how much of your practice is surgical versus non-surgical. Is it all cosmetic? Do you do any insurance work? And then kind of your office makeup. Do you have like an ambulatory surgery center that you work out of, or are you going to the hospital to do your cases?
Okay, so makeup of my practice, I would say myself, I'm 90+% surgical. I don't do a ton of non-surgical. Most of my non-surgical is on post-op patients, which is fun. We do neurotoxins, fillers. I have a skin pen, and we are just purchasing our first laser, which is, another daunting thing, but we're excited. I did a lot of lasers in training and my when I was on faculty, so it's definitely time. So I'm excited for that, to bring that on. But I have Kristen, who's a nurse practitioner, and she does most of our injections and skin pen, and then we'll be doing lasers, but I still do some. It just kind of depends how it works out or what the patients are requesting. But I'm mostly surgical, doing mostly breast and body, and then some face blephs or eyelid surgery, kind of the whole gamut. I don't really do much rhinoplasty anymore. I'm kind of like, there's so many experts on that in the town. So I tend to refer those, but that's where I'm at. And what else? As far as insurance goes, so I am out of network with insurance companies now. Wasn't my initial plan, but when I went on my own, it was because I love breast reconstruction after breast cancer. I would also do like breast reductions through insurance. So any breast surgery with insurance. But it was so challenging to try and get on these contracts and kind of daunting being such a small practice that I just kind of started doing other things and haven't gotten on insurance yet. I'm not sure eventually if I will, but we will help patients bill or submit to their insurance with me being out of network. So sometimes that will work out, but generally not. I'm sorry, what were the other parts of the question?
Well, I do think it's unfortunate that the whole milieu of healthcare and insurance has made it so complex that they really exclude folks like you who would be an excellent breast recon surgeon. But since you're solo and have decided to be more autonomous because you are a mom and you want to have control of your schedule, that it's too difficult for you to like fill out all the paperwork and keep up with it.
Yeah, and I know it's possible, and I know you can hire third-party companies to do your billing and collections, and I could also hire someone in-house. But since it's not a huge percentage of my practice, I didn't know if financially it would help or more hurt me by trying to put a lot of resources to that, which I hate that, especially for my existing recon patients. But that's where we are right now.
Yeah. Where are you operating?
I operate at a couple surgery centers. The one I go to most frequently is associated with Baylor Plano. So it's about 20 minutes from our office. And I have an awesome team there. And so we're looking at potentially adding additional places closer to here, but I don't think I'll ever fully leave there because it's just great people and a great team. So I like it up there. And for the most part, patients kind of come in from everywhere. So the 20-minute drive is not too bad. I don't think anyone's been thinking it's too far, but it is a little bit of a distance from the clinic. And then in clinic, we'll just do in-office procedures. So I don't do any anesthesia here, but anything under local, we do.
I'm part of a small group of female facial plastic surgeons that are across the country. And the other day we were chatting about surgery center fees and negotiating those. So realistically, if a patient were listening right now was interested in a breast augmentation with you, you essentially give them a quote as a surgeon, but then you have to essentially pay to operate at the surgery center. Was it in Dallas, was it hard to find a surgery center that would accept you for a reasonable rate? Was there any negotiation that you did with them?
That is a great question and probably something I need to work on because I like my surgery center. Another reason why I initially started operating there is because they had very fair rates, in my opinion. So it's kind of like now I have a great team and I'm there for that reason. But initially I was like, okay, this is actually very in line with what I had seen or what, it's hard because what do you compare it to? But I had some other places and I found it to be very reasonable. And the way my patients do it actually is they have 3 separate charges. And this is probably very confusing, but Allison keeps it all straight and I think explains it to them very well. So they know what's going on, but they have their surgeon fee, which is obviously not just coming straight to the surgeon, but to run this practice in this clinic. And then they have their facility fee, which goes to that surgery center. And that's going to pay for the staff who helps them in pre-op, post-op, or the PACU, the recovery room, the people in the operating room with them, which, patients usually understand is not just like one other person, but it's a whole production there. All of the sterile drapes, all of the disposables, all the equipment that we're using, our liposuction machine, our cautery, sutures, just kind of all of that. So I totally get that adds up. So the rates, they're not low, they're not low, but I find them to be very fair where I'm operating. Some of the other places I look, like I always am looking for, what is the staff like? What's the facility like? But also, what are the costs associated with it? And just have to see if it's worth it. If it's going to be $2,000 more per surgery, that money is going to have to come from somewhere. So it's probably not a great place to add, if that makes sense. And then the third fee is the anesthesia fee. So I have board certified anesthesiologists only. So that's like a little pricier potentially. But since we're not in a team, I used to work with a lot of CRNAs, which was great, but they always had a team and an anesthesiologist on site. So when it's just one of them, I generally am just with the anesthesiologist. I have one who does the majority of my cases. And then she has a couple partners who do the other cases when she's out of town or unable to do it. So we've got a little group there. So those are the 3 different fees that they'll have.
Yeah.
And I know yours is totally different since you have your own surgery center, which I'm sure has pluses and minuses of control, but stress. So
Yeah, I don't know. I'm glad I didn't realize how complex it would be when I started out, because I might not have done it. But I got so far into it that I was like, there's no turning back. But certainly it is a lot to open and run an ASC. The other day we walked in and there was no oxygen in our system. It had all bled out overnight. There was a leak in our system somewhere. We always have a plan B to take care of patients. So we were able to still do our case that morning safely with plenty of oxygen. We just had to use a different system. But it's just the minute I think I have it all figured out, there's like some other little thing that happens. And like planning for drug shortages and stuff is something that I worry about, and trying to keep track of which drugs are like on allocation and ordering them way ahead of time. And it's
yeah,
a whole.
when I got this clinic, I was kind of like, okay, I need everything to be perfectly compliant, obviously, all the OSHA compliance and keeping up with all of that. And then just the medications that I need for in-office procedures. So and everyone's always like, are you going to open your own surgery center? And I'm like, let me just like take a breath, because I just did all of this clinic and it was pretty challenging, in a fun way, but challenging. And I can't imagine, I think you did it kind of all at once. And I was like, this was a nice, let's get the clinic up and going and safe. And then maybe potentially down the line, we look at an operating room. At this point, as I said, I'm pretty happy. But it's not out of the question in the next, I don't know, 25 years or however long I have left operating.
Yeah. Well, I want to shift gears a little bit. I love talking to women in surgery that have kids, because I think it's such like a daunting thing when you're a med student. Like we both fell in love with surgical fields. I had no clue if I was going to be able to have kids or not. We decided to have them, which I'm so glad we did. But I think for younger females, or really, I guess, anyone that's planning to have a family and pursue a surgical field, talk about like, if you're comfortable, your decision to have kids and you had them so close together. How did you go about all that? Because I think a lot of women opt not to go into surgical specialties because they're fearful that they won't be able to have both.
That's a great question. I do think so. In my mind, it was never going to be one or the other. I wanted kids my entire life. I mean, you never know. And thankfully I have them, but I think I was maybe just a little bit delusional that I thought, of course I can do both. I don't know. Maybe still am just trying to do it. But yeah, I don't know. For me, I was always kind of like, I'll give myself the time. And I know everyone says this, there's never going to be a right time. Mine happened to work out like right at the end of training. But that's just kind of how it worked out in my life as well. I was fortunate enough to have 2 females, or really a couple, that I got even closer with as training went on, or some of them I met later in my training, who were surgeon moms as well. And I was just like, okay, well, they're doing it. Like it must, it's possible. It basically showed me it was possible. And I didn't realize how important it was until I had those mentors to have them. So I kind of started training, and honestly, most of my mentors were males. Most of them had kids. But I mean, I hate to say it, it is I feel like it's a little bit different, male to female. So, I thought it was possible. But then once I met these women and became closer with them as mentors who were plastic surgeons, who some of them had their own practice and were like crushing it as surgeons, who also had a couple of kids, I'm like, okay, this is possible. I know I can do it. And then once I did it, I did find it to be harder than I thought it was going to be. You're never going to have total flexibility because ultimately, I kind of jump topics here, but like no matter what, like the person on your operating table is the most important person in your life at that moment. Like you have to have someone else that you can fully trust to be there for your kids in that moment. Like, my kids have gotten sick while I've been in the operating room and it's like, ultimately you have to have someone you trust because you're the only person there for that person on the operating room table. But having the flexibility of once that surgery is done to have control over the rest of the afternoon or that sort of thing is incredibly important, I found. And that's what, we're still figuring out every day, but having a little village and growing it as time goes on and more people that you really trust to help with your kids is so important. And I'm so thankful that I have that. I don't have any family that lives nearby, but my parents come in a lot. My mom's in town about a week a month helping out. I'm not even going to go through the village, but a lot of people who also help, which is very nice. And then most of my weekends, barring any like emergencies, like it's family time and I can work on things after the kids are in bed, but I pretty much, knock on wood, never have responsibilities unless, emergencies, as I said, but I'm pretty clear on the weekends. So I at least know, even if I have a rough week and I haven't seen my kids a couple nights, or I have to leave early in the morning and don't get to like get them ready. Usually I get to get them ready a couple of mornings a week. Sometimes it's none, but I always know like at least Saturday, Sunday, all day I have for the kids, which is probably one of the biggest changes going from academics to private practice. And that's huge.
Yeah. And such a well put statement. So you really can't leave the OR when there's an
Right.
emergency with your children, no matter what. So another question that came up among some of my other colleagues was, what do you guys do when you have to go out of town? So you're solo. Talk about the kind of the mental burden for maybe some younger residents out there that are thinking about going solo, of being the only surgeon in your practice, not necessarily having a partner. What that means, like if you're going to go out of town, do you stop operating so many days before? If you run into some complexity in the operating room, do you have the mentors that you can speed dial?
Absolutely. First of all, on the mentors in the speed dial, yes, 100%. Even usually it's like pre-op photos, thankfully, when I'm asking, but you'll always find things that no matter how many cases you've done or how well trained you are, and you're going to find things that you haven't seen, or you're like, what's the best way to fix this? Or I know different people love their different techniques, but I still have people I reach out to all the time and always will. Even when I'm, 20 years in, I hope, and to ask the best technique or their best recommendations. So that is definitely there. I'm also really lucky that I trained in this town and I know a lot of plastic surgeons in this town, and not just like, hey, I know you, but like, I know you can operate. I know you can take care of a patient if I need you to. It's not just having like a warm body who also is a surgeon, but, knowing them well enough to trust them with your post-op patients. So generally my goal, I always take my own phone calls, at least so far. Even like I was international or in Europe last month. And like I had one of my colleagues is like, oh yeah, just your patients, like you can even forward your like calls or whatnot. Like I'm happy to help. Like people are just overly nice and overly supportive, which is amazing. But I'm like, no, I'll always take those calls because ultimately that's how I am. I want to know, I want to be the one making the call on what to do. But I always have someone dedicated. And if something were to come up, there's always going to be a couple more that I can call to see a patient, which is really, really nice and reassuring. And then of course I have like my office staff who can do like the smaller things or the computer things or that. sort of thing. So yes, I'm solo and like it's my own practice, but I don't feel like I'm really that solo at all. I actually just had lunch with another female plastic surgeon that we had not caught up with, or we hadn't caught up in way too long. And we just met up for lunch. It's good to just kind of stay in touch and have those people to bounce ideas off of and to help you when you need it as well.
Yeah, for sure. So you mentioned a couple of your team members. Give us a sense of how big your office is right now and kind of who's helping you see patients, take care of them.
For sure. So Allison, she is a nurse by training. She's currently in nurse practitioner school. And she is starting her clinicals. So unfortunately, she's going to part-time, which we knew all along, but I wish she was always going to be full-time. But so she is actually acting more as like my office and patient coordinator. So she talks with patients about kind of their surgical plan after they go over it with me, of course. And then she'll give them their quote for surgery and be their right-hand person all the way through scheduling and beyond. So that's mostly what she does. She also will sometimes do clinical things. You know, she's like the jack of all trades, and is like a huge asset. And then we have Maggie, who is a medical assistant. She's actually a pre-PA student, though, or she's graduated, but she's applying to PA school. So we knew this from the start as well, but she is our medical assistant until she goes to PA school, potentially in about a little over a year. And so she's the person who will come in to all the consultations with me and help with various things, keeping notes, helping with the implant try-ons and sizing. For post-op patients, she helps with measuring for their garments and getting them into their compression garments after surgery, answering questions, changing dressings, that sort of thing. She also does all of our photos, which, as you know, is a huge, very important part of our practice. So having someone good at that is so important. So she's a huge asset there and kind of lining up our before and afters and coordinating all of that. Probably a lot of other things. So Maggie, if you're listening, I know I didn't touch on every aspect, but she does a lot for our practice. She does all of our instrument sterilization, setting up our trays, that sort of thing. And then we have English. I mentioned her earlier, she was a digital marketing major and kind of our marketing coordinator. So she oversees our SEO side of things and then also all of our in-office, mostly social media. She's helping us plan our grand opening right now. That's an all hands on deck job, but she's overseeing that and just kind of coming up with the creative ideas. She's also incredibly friendly and kind of is our person who greets our patients when they come in on clinic days. And she doesn't get as much done on clinic days because she's constantly kind of like chatting with patients as they come in. Our next position, I bet maybe would be a receptionist or front of house person, potentially just on our clinic days. I don't know how practical that is though, because most people want full time. But if we are expanding, that's probably where I would look next so that English can have more time to focus on the marketing. But right now this is working. And then we have Kristen, who is a nurse practitioner, and she's been injecting for about 4 to 5 years and also doing lasers. She does PRP, skin pen, kind of all of that good stuff. And that is our whole team for now.
That's
So
so
we started off
awesome.
small and then kind of rapidly expanded. But you know that people always say, don't do that too quick. For now, it's working. So, fingers crossed that this is the right moves. But I can't imagine running this, especially on like a busy clinic day, without every single one of them. So for now, it's working well.
And how did you find each of them?
So Allison was a nurse at UT Southwestern. However, I did not totally steal her because she had to go part-time and they didn't have a part-time position. So, anyways, to her former bosses who miss her very much, they know this, but so that's how I knew her. And then Maggie, I had put out an Indeed ad, which that was actually really interesting because I think on Indeed, you can just kind of click. You probably know more about this than I do. Like, yes, I'm interested. So we were just completely overwhelmed with all the applications. And then I'm trying to like individually go through all of them and give every single one the time it deserves. And that got a little overwhelming. So I was really thankful to actually, she ended up like writing a separate email, which was very attention grabbing. And then just kind of was a great fit, I felt. So that's how we found Maggie. English, I know through she was a patient of one of my doctor friends. And she's kind of like, hey, I have this. Are you still looking for someone? Because she's awesome. And I've known her for so long. And I was like, absolutely, I'm looking. So that's how we found English. Kristen is kind of a friend of a friend that I've actually known since before she finished nurse practitioner school. And I was always like, oh, that would be kind of fun if one day we worked together. She seems really great. And then it just kind of worked out well with both of our lives at this point that this is what she was looking for. And we connected. So kind of all different ways. I wish I had like, oh yeah, you just put out this ad and the right person shows up on your doorstep. But yeah, I learned it's not that easy.
Yeah, and I feel like especially with healthcare, it's just what we do is so intimate with patients. And I don't know about you, but I feel like I'm not great at interviewing people. So it's hard to get a sense of like who long term is going to be a great fit. One, for patient care, but two, like team dynamics and getting someone that's going to, gel with everyone that's already there.
Yeah, like a big part of me, I was like, look, we're a startup, we're growing. This is your job description, but also like we all do everything. We like, I take out the trash, I take the laundry home and do it. We have a laundry service now, but I'm talking about day one. All of those things, like we all chip in because ultimately we all need to be like brainstorming and working to grow the business. So I feel really, really lucky that I've found these people so far, but I also know like nothing's going to be forever, which is going to be really sad when people kind of are going to ultimately move on to different things and we'll have to find more people. And I mean, I know these amazing people are out there. My favorite is when patients are like, hey, are you by chance hiring for this position? And I'm like, oh my gosh, I would so love that because, when they can speak to being a patient as well. I've actually had some in the past that have kind of worked with us that have been patients, and they're awesome to have this part of the team to kind of give their insight to the surgery and kind of their experience. But also, as you said, finding the right people, not just to help your team and help grow the practice, but to make the patients feel comfortable. And not every patient wants the exact same type of person. So they have to kind of be able to adapt if they're more reserved or that sort of thing, and having a team that knows how to do that and can make people comfortable. That was one of the biggest compliments I got. Like, Maggie made me feel so comfortable, and I was like, oh, I love that. That's huge. So
yeah, that whole emotional intelligence score, your team being able to read the patient and kind of mirror what they're wanting out of the visit, I think is really important.
Yeah. And you talked about interviewing. So I interviewed a lot when I was in academics because we would interview for residency and fellowship and that sort of thing. And I really enjoyed it. And I felt like I feel like I had a pretty decent read on people. And some of the people that I really fought for ended up being people who were huge assets to our program. So I'm like, oh yeah, I think I can tell, or I don't know. And then it's like you have these interviews and I'm like, I don't know, are they going to be good? And should we do a second round? Because I need someone else to confirm this. And, it's hard, but ultimately, I don't know, can always improve on that. This is where I needed not just a business minor, which I don't have, but a business major or something as well to learn those skills. My husband's in business and I will come to him with, various things. And he's like, oh yeah, that's a red flag, or oh yeah, that's a good person. I love that quality. So he's someone I can bounce ideas off of as well.
Yeah. What's been one of your biggest challenges these last couple months?
Oh my gosh. I feel like they said this about medical school, drinking from a fire hose. The second I'm on my computer doing one thing and, oh, but we need this order approved. And if this doesn't get done within the next 30 minutes, we're not going to have this for the next day. Oh, but did you approve the mesh size for this? Did we get these implants in? And it's every tab on my computer and also every tab in my brain is open. And then there's a random issue. Totally. My house was out of power for 4 days last week. And it was just an insane week. And I just felt like I did not have any more bandwidth to deal with anything else at home because work was every single aspect, it's always something, and it's fun, and it's like stuff I want to do, but you have to keep really well organized. Like my Post-it note to-do lists have turned into like multi-tab Excel sheets, and it's like just trying to keep it all straight. I would say that's probably the biggest challenge. And like I knew it would be a lot, but it's even more a lot than I even imagined.
Yeah, no, I get every last detail of what you just said. I feel the same way.
I posted something like my brain, what was it? Like an I Love Lucy thing of trying to keep up. And then it was like another female plastic surgeon was like, this is my life too. And I was like, I love that that's the person who connected with it. Like, of course it was her. So funny.
Well, as we wrap up, what are a couple things that you're really looking forward to with your practice? Let's say maybe tomorrow, in 5 years, kind of what do you see for your future?
Okay, well, short term, it's easy because we're planning our grand opening right now. So that's like, we're all pumped for it. Instead of the usual like end of day randomly wrapping up, like the whole rest of the team is still in the next room, like talking about ideas and stuff that we can bring in. So that's definitely my like tomorrow or really end of this month, like what I'm super excited for. I would say in 5 years, I don't want to grow too big. I never want to be rushing patients through. I think I'm a lot like you in terms of like a full adequate amount of time for each new consult. I'm never in a rush for that. I always have it blocked. I see every post-op myself. So I never want to grow beyond where I can't be doing those things, but just growing, building our team, building some more of like the non-surgical side, adding additional devices and lasers, because I'm very, my training. And as I was saying, prior, I was super involved with like laser education and all of that sort of thing. So just kind of growing our team, and practice in that way, in addition to the surgical side. I think my goal would be that I'm still operating several days a week. I never want to slow that down, at least not for remotely foreseeable future, but growing in other aspects as well.
That's so awesome. Well, for any patients or let's say any future mentees, young budding plastic surgeons, how can people get a hold of you?
Okay, so you can call the office, 945-218-5474. You can shoot us an email. Should I say it? I mean, everything just, sure. It's just scheduling@culvermd.com. But social media is super easy. Patients are always like, or people on social media will always say, wow, I can't believe you responded that quickly. I'm like, well, yeah, this is what I do before I go to bed. I have to make sure all 3 Instagrams and the TikTok and everything's wrapped up nicely. And almost everything has been responded to. Hopefully, I apologize if there's anyone I haven't, but that's a really great way to get a hold of us as well. And I can always have someone reach out to you if you reach out via one of the social medias, or, our website has a contact form. I hope that is never a big question. If you look for Abby Culver or Culver Plastic Surgery, I hope it's very easy to see a way to get in touch with us. That's my goal.
Oh, perfect. Thanks, Dr. Culver, so much.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It was really fun.
Thank you for joining us this week on the Business of Aesthetic podcast series brought to you by our gold sponsor, Equa Marketing. Would you like to join our growing group of aesthetic industry experts and get featured on the Business of Aesthetics podcast? Or do you know someone who would love to share their strategies for growth in the aesthetic business, providing quality patient care or their clinical expertise? Head over to www.businessofesthetics.org/podcast show and apply to be featured as a guest on the show. Remember to subscribe to this podcast on iTunes, Amazon Music, or wherever you listen. If you would like to engage with today's speakers or any of our past speakers, join our Facebook group or LinkedIn group by searching for Business of Aesthetics. Thank you and have a great day.